Hello, this is Danny from CG Dreams. This is part 7 and is the part where I will show you some ways to add more control over the vibrate tag. Now it must be noted that this level of control is experimental and you may not get the same results for all rigs when applying this. Now in the next video we're going to add just one more important aspect to our espresso setup, and I'll show you why we need to add this. Now what tends to happen is when we turn off the flap control, the wings stop wherever they were in its phase of flapping, and this is really not ideal. We ideally want it to revert back to its original default position. If we were to select these controllers and go to the coordinates, you can see here that they're kind of stuck there. Now you can obviously go there and select the controllers manually and then expand this and click on reset transform. That brings that down, but we want to automate this process, so that's why I'm going to show you in the final part of this for the wings of how to automate that process. The way to do this is we will right click and we'll go and select empty X group. It's kind of like a folder within a folder, and then I'm going to right click within this and go new node, Espresso General, and then we're going to go and select constant. If we select the constant, you can see here that the value is set to 0. This is what we want. We want all of the wings to be zeroed out. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all of the wings that have got the rotation written in them. These are the ones that have actually got our vibrate tag on them, and we drag and drop them in there. We will spread these out so we're going to use the quicker way of doing this. We're going to select one at a time the left small wing. We go to the coordinates and we're going to drag and drop the head in, the pitch and the bank, and that's the one there. Yeah, make sure you get the right one. Head in, pitch, the bank. Before we connect this up, we're going to select this group. We're going to activate it. We're going to enable an input here called enable. This gives us an extra parameter that we can set up, and come back when I've done them all. But you want to connect all of these up. We're going to select our controller, wings, and the flap on and off, right click, expressions, set driver, and then we're going to go and select our X group, and not in the basic tab but in the parameters we're going to right click on enable expressions and set driven absolute. It's going to create a brand new expression for us, so that's just select this group. You can see here now it's switching it on and off. Going back to here, we've got our espresso on a new null, which we don't need the null, so we're going to keep the expression and drag it to the one above the one that's already there and delete this null. If you double click and have a look here, we've got this setup where this controller data called flip or flap on off is a switch, and it's enabling this X group. Now the X group is actually in here, our espresso below this, and the reason why we've kept them separate is because we want a different priority to take place. And also, as soon as we turn it off, we've got our FK control back as well, and at all times we've got the ability to fold these wings. And that concludes how to set these wings up. We've gone to the point of making sure that the wings flap. They've got FK control and that when we stop the vibration tag from flapping the wings, they reset. But the thing with a bee is that the actual thorax is responsible for a majority of the flapping of the wings, because the muscles are actually internal in the thorax. This is why if you see a slow motion of a bee flapping, its actual body bobs up and down. So the way it is right now, it's not highly realistic enough to get away with not having the body move at all. And it's for this reason that I've gone to the next stage of adding a vibrate tag to the body as well. Now, I don't need to show you how to set this up from scratch, because we've done it already with the wings. It's an exactly the same process, only rather than dealing with rotation, we're dealing with position. So I'm just going to take you a quick run through of what I've done and how I've set this up. I'm going to start by directing your attention over to here, where we've got this master controller. This master controller up to this point hasn't been used for anything, but now it is going to be used. So just to recap here, this body controller here is the controller that moves the body up and down but allows the legs to remain where they are. And then we've got this root controller, which you can see is a selectable controller in the user interface that allows you to move the entire character, or in this particular case the bee, around your scene. So this is handy for when it's flying about in your scene. But this master controller hasn't got no visual controller in there, and this is because we're going to be using this to attach the vibrate tag to. So again, like before, we used down the shift and the C key, we type in vibrate, and there it goes, and we will double click that and it will add that to that. Now in the vibrate tag, the things that are important to note here is that we are going to be moving the character up and down, left and right, etc. So it's the position, whereas with the wings it was the rotation that we were dealing with. But still the same thing, we're dealing with position, amplitude and frequency. And you can see here they're already assigned there. Just like we assigned the wings, this time we're assigning the enabled position, amplitude and frequency. So with that said, let's go back to our user data, and you'll see here that we've got wings and body. Okay, so how do we get wings and body? Well, let's go back into the user data and manage user data. So what we have is we have two groups. We have the wings group that we've already made and then I added an additional group and I called that body. Now if body is inside the wings group, it's not going to show in its own tab like it does at the moment. If it's inside the user data, it won't show up within its own group like it is now. So it needs to be separate, a separate group. Now the bob on and off, speed and amplitude is set just like the flip on and off, speed and amplitude. You'll see here that there's absolutely no difference in there, but the only difference that there is that when it comes to amplitude, with the wings we were dealing with rotation, so we were dealing with degrees. With the amplitude, which is the movement part of it, we're dealing with a length unit that is in centimeters in this particular case. So that's the only thing we need to change. The on and off switch and the speed are exactly the same, and that's how we arrive at this. So we've got this additional control found in the body, and this is where we set things up within the Espresso, just like we did for the wings, where we connect the bob on and off, the speed and the amplitude to the new vibrate controller, which is obviously in the master controller. So let's have a look at that now. So unlike before, where I was creating these elements separately for the wings, you can see here we've got amplitude for the wings, we've got the flap on and off for the wings, we've got the speed, and we've got the wing fold, and what's this one here, the dynamic wings. These have been separated off, but you can also do them in one single controller, and that's what I've done here. So let's move up, and there we go, here it is. So we've got the controller data exactly the same as this controller data, only within here we've made sure we've only enabled the inputs for the bob, amplitude and speed, and of course this is found within the body group of our user data, and there they are. You can see here what I've assigned, and then of course we've gone to a range mapper, and we just look at the range mapper for the amplitude, because this is where you're going to see the difference between the wings. Is that in the range mapper we're dealing with a vector like before, but this time we're dealing between a 0 and a 1000, and the parameters, you can see here that we've got the slider set to 0 to 1000, but the actual output itself is 0 to 100. I don't feel like I need the body bobbin more than 100 centimeters, because this is what this is representing. Now the reason why we've got 1000 set in the slider is because it allows us to have a different amount of adjustability. It won't be too sensitive when we change the this parameter, and this parameter is the amplitude that we're talking about here, the bobbing up and down or left and right even, because we've got control over that. And that is all there is to it. The vibrate tag obviously on the master controller is drag and dropped into here, where we enable the inputs on the tag, the position frequency, enable position, and there was another one, wasn't there? Oh, and is it one? There we go. Position, amplitude. So they're the three we've added, and we've just hooked them up. Now the next stage is to be able to reset the bobbin, just like we did with the wings. But in order for this to work, even though we follow the same routine, we need to change the hierarchy about a little bit. And you'll notice between your scene you may have a different setup with the hierarchy. So in this hierarchy we've got this control data with the flap on and off, body or bob on and off, okay, for the X groups that are found above it. So this is the X groups for these two, and let's just have a look at these. So this is the reset wings X group, a constant that's setting it to 0, and this is the reset bob, a constant setting the master controller position to 0, so that when we disable the reset bob and the reset wings, it will be in connection with our on and off to bob it up and down. So it's going to reset and do the bobbing. This is doing the flapping and it's doing the reset. But by having these in two different expressos, we're creating a different priority order, so that the priority is being triggered at a different timing, and this is why it will then work. And of course, the only thing that you'd need to do with this is update your HUD by selecting your controller data there, and you select your wings, control click on all of these, right click and add to HUD. You do exactly the same thing for the body, right click and then add to HUD down there. And then there you go, there will be up there, and the result will or should be like this. So we will see it's static. We're going to turn on the flapping of the wings. We stop it, it resets the wings. We're going to turn on the bobbing, turn it off, it resets. And of course we can have these together. I'm going to exaggerate it a little bit so we can really see this bobbing. And flat the wings. And there you go. The only thing left to do then is add some keyframes and then test it out for animation. And then of course once it lands, we can switch off the bobbin. So it stops the second it lands on its feet. There we go. Now, as I've shown a few times during this process, that this is not foolproof. I've had some problems with this setup. When I was setting it up, it was working, and then the next minute it wasn't working. Then I was trying to work out whether it was priority issues, and then I seem to have kind of found a way that it's working, but I can't guarantee that this is going to be working for your rig or any future rig, because this is not something that I've seen anyone do as far as resetting the vibrate tag. But I felt that it's something that was worth trying, and it may need some further investigation. The best way to test this out is to apply it, render it out to make sure it's working in the render, because if there's any on-screen viewport delays that's going on, it will look slightly different to when you actually render on it. It's the actual render which is showing you the real reality of what's going on. Another way to test it is to bake your geometry down to an Alembic file. Again, if there's any discrepancies of what is actually seen on your viewport to what's really happening behind the scenes with its timing, then that's going to be baked into your Alembic file. In other words, if there's errors, the rendering will show the errors and the baking will show the errors. In my particular case, the only reason I'm showing you this setup is because I did bake it and I have rendered it, and it seems to be absolutely fine. Now, it goes without saying that there is many other things that you can do with this rig. You can certainly add a lot more control data. So I'm just going to briefly talk about some of the things that you can add. One of the things that you can add is a visualizer, and I'm going to select my main bee here and right click, and if you go to, it should be rigging, I believe, visual selector, that's the one. What you can do is you can add a visual selector of your bee, so that when you click on the wings, the feet, the antennae, etc., it automatically selects the controller that's assigned to it. If you want a video on how to set that up, I can do that upon request. So that's one thing that you can do. You may want to go through and do some tweaking, like you can see here. We can select this controller, we can just move it just outside the bounds where it's okay. These are just little tweaks that you can do as you're going to go through this process. You may want to have this stinger go in and out, and this can be done with post morphs as well. You also may want to create a object selector. So if you go in this select menu, you've got select filter here, you can create a selected or selection object. This is somewhere where you can drag and drop all your controllers into there that you're going to be needing access to. So I'm going to just lock that for the moment there, and you've got all of our controllers that we can add into there. All you have to do is just drag and drop them into there, the ones that you do or don't want. And this is going to make it a little bit easier for you to select certain controllers. You can just double click on these, which means that you can then have everything collapsed inside the scene and just have this open. So it's another way to have quick access to these things. Quite handy to do this, and of course you can rearrange it in a certain order, etc. So that's something that you can have in there. I wouldn't want to maybe have everything in there, but just the main core controllers that you're going to be using a lot. I would certainly add some additional user data when it's regarding the dynamics, because the faster the wings flap, the more the dynamics are going to need to change. One thing you can do is you can actually set up the speed control to automatically adjust some of the parameters in your user data, so that as the speed gets more, then the strength is changed for the dynamics. And again, this is done quite simply with range mappers so that you can get the right balance. So there's all those kind of things that you can do, just as a few ideas. And of course, experiment, see what you like, what you don't like, and make changes. It's all a learning process and a tweaking process, but it's not until you actually go ahead and really use the rig properly in a proper animation scenario is when there's going to be some things that maybe you think could do some tweaking, maybe done better, and that's when you can implement them and refine your rig even further. I would say eventually, after using this rig for a little bit and really trying to break it and push it beyond its boundaries and seeing that it works fine, then I would go ahead and make a character object out of it. So we're talking about in here where you can actually create your own character in the character builder, and it means that you're going to be able to add it in a more modular fashion to other rigs in the future. But I wouldn't do that until I've spent a good time with this and tweak and really refine things even further for future use. So I hope you enjoy going through all of this process and learn something from it. Please watch my other videos. I've made sure that I've actually added all of the chapters to each video so that you can go back easily and pinpoint a particular part that you may want to relearn or re-go over again. If you like my content and have learned something from it, please give a thumbs up and subscribe. I'm not monetizing my content, it's for free, made for you in my own free time. So please give me some support back by hitting that thumbs up and subscribing. The next part of this video tutorial will be up very soon, and we will continue where we left off. So stay tuned.